Witches ain't shit but hoes and tricks.
Oh, God.
Sneak attack.
That was great. Okay, yeah.
Welcome, lovely listeners, to Dead and Lovely, your new favorite horror movie review podcast. Here with your main men. I'm good old Uncle Ben. Who's that on the other end of that Skype line there?
Well, it's Hollywood Stevens Rattling.
Oh, Hollywood Steve. How are you doing out there in them Hollywood hills this week?
I'm just eating gold-plated caviar.
So I'll tell you what, you guys, this is yet another episode featuring an introduction from Ben and Steve from the future. That's something we didn't tell you guys right up front here, but we are currently residing in the future. The rest of this episode will take place in the past. As you avid listeners will know, we actually started recording this podcast sometime last year to try to build up a backlog of episodes. Only amateur hour Eller audio kind of fucked up a bunch of the audio on a lot of these, so we've had to re-record a bunch of them. But this one, I managed to salvage pretty much all of the audio.
Which is good, because it's a good episode.
It's got some coolness in there. So this is our episode where we review The Witch, which is one of our favorite horror movies.
Yeah.
Really, from this side of the millennium. It's a fantastic flick, and where this episode is going to pick up is with us talking about our personal, real-life close encounters with witchcraft, which are pretty fantastic. This episode, listening through it, cleaning up the audio and stuff like I did, I'll tell you, it's a really in-depth episode. Me and old Steve Arena really care very deeply about this movie, so we cover it pretty deeply, but there's a lot of information here about witches through history and witchcraft and so on, and also Steve, you had some really cool insights, especially about the very end of this movie and some of the ideas of what it represents, and kind of an interesting parallel to Christianity in a lot of ways. Really, really cool stuff.
I can't disagree with you, Ben.
Hey.
Things I tend to say tend to be cool. I mean, it's hard not to be cool.
Well, when you're Hollywood Steve, you're kind of always on cool. What's cooler than being cool? Hollywood Steve.
Ice cold. Oh, yeah, Hollywood Steve.
That was the original lyrics. Well, let me ask you, Hollywood Steve, because it's been probably about 5 or 6 months since we recorded this original episode. Have your perceptions of this movie changed, or have you had any other insights about it, or raised any other questions?
I have. I actually watched it again recently, and there is so much going on with the use of light and really Anya Taylor-Joy's close-ups. Almost all of them, there's a shadow cast over one side of her face.
Really?
Yeah. Unless it's when they're outside in that like gray sort of lighting. Whenever it's inside, there's this shadow sort of cast over her face, which so it leads to that idea that maybe she has these two sides, an evil side and a good side. But there's so much going on in that movie. I wouldn't want this intro to get too long.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, like, I watched it again a couple of weeks ago, and it's probably about the 4th or 5th time I've seen this movie now, and even knowing it inside and out, I still, man, like, at the very end of that movie, I still feel completely unnerved, and I don't want to be awake in the house by myself. I think the end of this movie is one of the most unsettling, just disturbing movies.
It's so great.
Yeah, one of the most disturbing endings of a movie I've about ever seen. It just, even knowing it's coming, it makes me feel terrible.
That music just climbs up your spine. It's so good.
It's
good.
Awesome, man. Now, I'll ask you a question about this.
Yeah.
All right. And this is just kind of a random one that I thought of the other day. So, our main characters in this movie, of course, are settlers coming to the new world and so on, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Those witches, where did they come from, and how long have they been there, and why did they go to the new world and become witches?
I said it in the episode. You'll hear it in the future, guys.
Gosh.
That the witches that they're like a force of nature in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, they came from somewhere, but it's also like they always existed there. Like that forest was always theirs. It's so dark. It's so great. I love it.
It's a whole lot different from what I learned about witchcraft from like the Harry Potter series. It's a lot.
Yeah, why wasn't Dobby in this movie?
I don't even know if there's a single wand in this fucking movie.
Yeah, hey, that all right. There's a broomstick though.
Yeah, that. And there are some potions, but they're quite a lot less charming.
It's a bit of a potion made, yeah.
Polyjuice potion seems downright appealing compared to this shit.
There is one thing for sure that I had wanted to say in our first recording, but I forgot. Ben, every episode, I don't know if you know this, I played baseball when I was young, and
you like a baseball?
Yeah, I played baseball and football, but baseball is a very there are a lot of like ideas about luck and in particular ways you can affect a game, and a lot of people in baseball, basketball, football, etc. will listen to the same song before they go out to a game. And every episode before we recorded, I always listen to Kendrick Lamar's King Kunta. And I wanted to say, when we recorded this the first time, I wanted to call Black Phillip a goat mouth mammy fucker, and I didn't get to do it. So, Black Phillip, you goat mouth mammy fucker.
And with that, I give you guys a brief musical transition and then a presentation of our review of The Witch. I hope you guys enjoy a little taste of past Ben and Steve. That was back in our salad days, Steve. Things were going so well for us back then.
Yeah, that was before the war, yeah.
Well, you guys enjoy, and us future folks will be back real soon. Goodbye now. Bye.
You know, you asked me before we started recording if I had any stories about witches.
Yeah.
I just now remembered I do. And it has to do with the way I was raised.
Yeah?
I was not raised religiously,
mm-hmm.
As we've learned in the past.
Yeah.
I was Mormon at a certain point in my life, but that was all my choice. I was not raised religiously. My mom, when I was little, my sister and I, out of nowhere, we got like a few warts on our fingers. Mm-hmm. There was no real explanation for it. Well, we didn't have insurance.
Sure.
So my mom took us to a witch woman.
Yo, thanks, Obama.
Who had buried some beans in a cemetery.
What?
And she dug them up, and then she rubbed the beans on the warts and said some sort of witch spell. And lo and behold, the warts didn't go away. But then my mom bought wart remover, and then they went away.
Science.
Yeah, I remember that. Like,
for real?
Yeah, just as you were talking about growing up religious, I was like, in my head, oh, wait a second.
Oh my God.
My mom took us to a witch woman.
See, because of the generation that we are, which is to say people born in the mid to early 80s, like there were so many people that were around our age during like high school era that saw, like, let's say The Craft.
Yes.
Who then were like, I guess I'm also a witch.
Yeah.
Kind of dabbled in Wicca and so forth in a very, 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 very half-assed way. I don't mean to demean anybody who's a successful practitioner of Wicca, but just like any religious organization, there's half-assers all over.
Yeah.
Kind of before I became a full-time working musician, I worked at a pizza place. And there was what Buffalo Bill might call a great big old fat person.
Super big old fat person.
that ran the pizza place that I worked at. And she kind of she kind of dabbled in Wicca whenever it was convenient to her and so forth. And there was like a little time period at the pizza place where, like, you know, we'd had a few slow nights, or like maybe somebody had like dropped a pizza pan and broke it, or the pizza wheel had broken, or whatever. What? And she was convinced that it was like, you know, evil spirits afoot. And one night after work, she like did a, I guess what they call a smudge, where she like burned some sage and wafted the smoke all over this fucking shitty pizza chain.
Get rid of them evil spirits.
And pizza
they
demons.
Hate sage.
They hate pizza.
The motherfuckers hate pizza. We know that. But evil spirits hate sage. That's why no one has ever been haunted on a Thanksgiving.
No, never.
No.
Also, the Jimmy Dean, never haunted.
Oh, man. Jimmy Dean's sausage.
What if Jimmy Dean tried to become a ghost but couldn't haunt his own properties because of the overwhelming amounts of sage present on the lot? I can't be here.
And that was just his normal voice. That's not even his ghost voice. That's how Jimmy Dean sounded, folks.
Now, Steve, me and you, whenever we were going to community college together, we had a near-death encounter with a campus college witch, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Oh my God! I couldn't even believe it. She kind of haunted the science lab building, wasn't it? She did, and she put up a sign to make her presence known. Assert her dominance.
Yeah, and that sign, folks, read, "Rats, rats, rats for sale."
It said it 3 times. Rats, rats, rats.
And then it said, "Call Keldra." Which can only be taken as the name of a witch.
Oh, yeah, I've never met someone who wasn't a witch that was named Keldra. Keldra. And that kind of led to just this long-standing catchphrase of Steve and I's that was, Keldra the Witch, 666. Oh. Alternatively, rats, rats, rats.
Rats, rats, rats for sale. And as I believe, as you observed, most people don't have a stutter when they type. Apparently Keldra does. Rats, rats, rats for sale.
You got that lethal type stutter.
Yeah.
So that's about all the encounters that I've had with witchery. I've had a pizza smudge and a rat for sale by Keldra. And you've had a wart bean.
I had a wart bean from a witchy woman.
We should start like a blackened death metal band called Wart Bean.
Wart Bean.
It sounds pretty cult.
Yeah, I'd listen to that.
So this movie, The Witch, it came out around 2015.
Well, yeah, that's when it went to Sundance. And then it didn't come out wide until 2016, February of last year, I think.
Undoubtedly the best horror movie that I saw that year.
Yeah.
Within the best horror movies that I've seen within the past 15 or 20 years, honestly.
Oh yeah, for sure. And this is Robert Eggers' first feature film.
That's fucked up. Has he done anything since then?
I think it said he was working on a remake of Nosferatu.
Oh, really?
Which is an interesting choice. I mean, Werner Herzog did that.
Yeah.
And Werner Herzog's Nosferatu is great. If you've seen the original Nosferatu, also great.
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine that Robert Eggers would mess up a Nosferatu remake. So, it could be really good.
Well, apparently he put years into kind of researching and writing the script for The Witch, which I think is really impressive in the age of, like, you know, Hollywood spec scripts that get churned out overnight, basically. It seems like he really put a lot of work into making this thing accurate. I even saw some trivia on IMDb that said that, like, even the American Church of Satan recognized this as being an approvable, insight into the works of the Church of Satan, which I think is pretty fucking interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think this movie is about finding salvation through letting go of Christ.
Wow, kind of through hedonism.
We're gonna get much more into that, but I I really think that's what this is going for. The idea of letting go of Christian value and finding real, true, like, openness and freedom.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And the movie starts off with the title screen, which is The Witch, and it says specifically a New England folk tale, which I think is a really interesting point about this, because even the fact
Yeah.
that it says this is a folk tale, to
Uh-huh.
me kind of indicates this is a story which has been retold.
Yeah.
Almost, I mean, just like so many other, precautionary, old wives' tales and fairy tales and so on,
Yeah.
where it's like, what you're seeing, I don't even know if this exactly happened. Maybe there was an actual story about this family that happened and went out on their own and were banished and bad things happened to them. But the folk tale is it was because of the devil. So even right there, right off the bat, it tells you it's a folk tale, which means it's been
Yeah.
passed down verbally and has been altered. God knows how many times being passed down.
Yeah.
I just think that's sort of an interesting preface to this.
Yeah, it is. The basic idea behind this movie is that a family leaves a Puritan settlement over a dispute regarding the interpretation of the New Testament.
Right.
And they basically get out into the wilderness, and they're subjected to a series of eerie tragedies caused by unknown forces.
Right. So they, of course, presume to be El Diablo.
Yeah. This movie opens with this score, like the strings of this score that really make this movie so eerie. Like,
oh my god, the soundtrack is baller. Holy
Yes.
fuck.
It's so good. Like, throughout, it is perfect.
Yeah, it's very Shining-esque at times in the soundtrack moments and stuff. Just really
Yeah.
hyper unsettling. Like, to me, unsettling is the best way I could describe so many elements of this fucking movie. But yeah, it starts off with our main lead character, Thomason, who's a teenage girl who, it took me about halfway through the movie before I realized I just saw her in Split a month or two ago.
Oh, yeah. She's also in a movie called Morgan, which is worth checking out.
I haven't seen that.
Oh.
And her father, Willem, is speaking. They're in a church.
William's her dad. And we see the whole family. We have William's dad, Catherine, is the mom. The older brother is Caleb. He's not older than her,
Right.
but he's the older of the two brothers. And the other brother is twins with a sister, and they're Mercy and Jonas.
Jonas,
right?
That's right. Yep.
Okay, so those are the names we're gonna hear throughout. Nobody else.
Right.
I don't think.
Super small cast. I love movies with just like damn 5 people in it. I think it's really great, especially in a horror flick, because again, The Shining, man, my all-time fave. There's like 5 people in that movie.
That claustrophobia that's automatic when there's just nobody else around.
I love it, man. And basically they're in this church, and Willem is saying that he cannot be judged by false Christians. And they get banished to not live on the plantation anymore and to go out and live on their own. Very much like a banishing of Adam and Eve. Very symbolic. Our family sets off on their covered kind of wagon thing. They ride off, and the soundtrack is just unnerving as fuck. And you see the family around a fire. This is the thing about this movie that I read, is that basically they used
natural light.
Yeah, they use natural and available lighting at all possible times.
Yep.
This movie looks like a fucking Rembrandt painting. It's so gorgeous at times, especially the candlelit shots. It's incredible to look at. I mean, seriously, it looks like Renaissance paintings left and right.
You have to watch this movie in the highest quality you possibly can.
Yeah, don't damn YouTube stream this or something like this.
Yeah.
And then, like, the camera, as they're riding off, the camera kind of zooms into the woods, and it's very Shining-esque. You get this impression that the woods are so much bigger and more vast than they are. It's very much like the Overlook Hotel, where it just seems to dwarf the actual characters in such a way that it seems as though they're just being swallowed into a beast whenever they go into the woods. It's so fucking cool. And the next morning, like, Thomason, our main girl, is like praying for forgiveness and stuff. You see that her family has kind of set up a kind of rudimentary encampment. There's a few basic structures. You kind of get the impression that time has passed. I saw some people online that were just like, well, what, they built that overnight? And it's like, when they set out, they didn't have a baby either. Obviously, time has passed. Duh.
Yeah, you do get an obvious sense that the time has passed, and the farm isn't big. It's not amazing.
No, and
got
they're
like a
unfinished, rudimentary, crude structures and stuff. I mean, it's not like they've damn built town or something like this.
Well, and they've also been there long enough that corn grew.
Exactly, dude. Exactly. Yeah, you think that grew overnight too? It's like, I don't know. A lot of the criticisms of this movie, I think, are fucking stupid.
Yes. Thomason's prayer, I think, is important.
Yeah?
Because what she says in her prayer, basically she, prays for forgiveness of her sins. And she says, I know I deserve all shame and misery in this life, and everlasting hellfire. But I beg thee for the sake of thy son, forgive me, show me mercy, show me thy light. Right. Okay, so if we are to believe that God answers prayers, and Thomason, from all appearance, she's praying and she's asking for forgiveness of her sins, which I am sure could not be terrible. I mean, there are only 4 other people near her. She can't be hurting anybody too bad.
Right.
If she does, she's asked for forgiveness of her sins and she asks to be shown his light, then we have to assume that everything that happens after is God showing her his light. And if that's what is happening, there are 2 different ways that the ending may go. We'll talk about that when we get there. But I think this is super important because we know Thomason isn't bad.
Right.
So yeah, she's got the baby, as you were saying.
Yeah, our new baby Samuel, which again you didn't see earlier, but is used to indicate a passage of time. And she's basically playing peekaboo with the baby, just kind of covering her face and then revealing her face and saying peekaboo and amusing the baby. And at one point she reveals her eyes, and then the baby is gone. The baby has just suddenly vanished, and she looks up, and there's sort of a rustling that goes on into the woods, as though something has carried the baby off in like 2 seconds while she had her eyes
she
covered.
Runs up to the edge of the woods and she stops.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, what? Like, why would she stop? That's weird. Later we find out that their parents forbade them from going into the woods. So
right, exactly. And then like this is when, especially that first time that I watched this movie, I was like, oh, okay, this movie is really fucking serious, because immediately what we cut to is,
oh my god,
it looks as though it's maybe in a dark cave or a dark interior of a structure or something like this.
Yeah.
And there's the naked baby laying there, and it's just kind of squirming around being a baby. And you see these old ancient hands kind of running over the baby and stuff. And then there's like a knife that gets pressed up against the baby, which you don't fucking see that in movies all the time. That's just that subject matter that's generally off limits.
But Ben, that's not the end of it, because cut to black and then cut back to the lady from behind. She's an older lady.
She looks like the lady from The Shining that comes out of the bathtub. She has like long hair going down her back, and she's nude, and she's old, and
she is churning away.
Holy fucking shit. Like, and the thing is like, whenever that happens, I thought it was soundtrack, because you just kind of hear this rhythmic thump, 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 thump.
But no, it's her using like a
it's like a mortar and pestle, like what you used to grind spices.
But big. It shows us an up close of her. Well, just the shot where you can see the rim of the churny thing, and you can see her like just sort of from the side, and she's rubbing this goo all over her, and you can just see just like chunks of viscera and blood all over. So she uses this and she spreads this all over herself.
Oh my god! Like again, like whenever that scene hit,
it's so fucking awesome. Yeah.
Because dude, like I can't think of any movie I've ever seen that has anything remotely that fucked up. Holy cow, man!
It's so good.
Whenever she walks out in front of the moon, too, she looks significantly younger, as though she's transformed to something like this, too. That shot of her in front of the moon is fucking amazing. And so then we get up the next morning, and Caleb, the son, he opens up the window, and the family is all asleep on the floor. They're just sleeping on the floor on rudimentary mattresses and straw, just like a bunch of fucking animals. And Thomason, his older sister there, our main girl, is dreaming, and he kind of looks down her bodice a little bit and spots a little bit of boob. Yeah,
this is important to Caleb. He loves boobs.
He's a boob man. Caleb's a boobs man. He's a boobsman, as he's discovering throughout the course of this movie. Even if it's a sister boob, he's all about. And so Caleb's going through the house, and he hears Catherine, his mother, praying and stuff.
Yeah, she's distraught, and obviously, I mean, she just lost her baby.
Exactly, praying for lost Samuel, and Caleb goes outside to Willem, the father, and they're talking about how they can't find the baby anymore. And Willem is out there with the corn, which it looks like the corn has blight all over it. It's like all nasty and eaten up and shitty.
Which is another theory about this movie. Is that it's ergot poisoning, which was also the theory about the Salem witch trials. Was
exactly
that people were hallucinating from ergot, and that's, I mean, that I'm not dismissing that theory. I just didn't think too much about it because I read about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's the corn is there's a mold or a rot of some sort on it.
What you got to think, again, when you're living as, 5 or 7 people or whatever out in the middle of nowhere, if your corn is bad, you're going to starve to death and fucking die. Like, it's not like when your backyard garden, here in first world America goes bad and you're like, oh, well, I guess I'll have to get shit from the store. It's like, no, you're going to fucking die. If your wheat is bad, you fucking die. If you can't hunt, you fucking die.
And, and so that's actually what happens here, is that basically the dad says that he set some traps and that they're going to go into the woods and, check the traps. And then the dad is like, we have to get meat. Like, we need food.
Yeah, we got to catch some animals.
And so, Caleb goes along with him. And they check the first trap, and it's been tripped, but nothing was caught.
They didn't catch anything. They're in the woods, and Willem is citing scripture and asking Caleb all these questions about scripture and stuff, all these questions about sin, and how Caleb was like, I was born sinful, and it's my nature to be a sinner, and I'm, basically dirty, just Puritan stuff. I'm dirty, filthy by nature. I need to repent and seek forgiveness for my nature.
And then he asks his dad, was Samuel born a sinner?
Right.
So people might assume, the baby was probably christened. No, the baby wouldn't have been christened. Protestants believed that a child had to understand what they were doing to get baptized.
Fucking imagine that.
So that means that Samuel was born a sinner, according to the father, and this is what causes Caleb then all this like distress.
Right.
Is Samuel was born a sinner. He's dead. Is he in hell? Like, is the baby, that little cute baby, is that cute baby roasting in hell?
Right.
I want to like re-emphasize that for anyone who's listening that really believes in hell.
Because that's what would fucking happen.
Cute baby roasting in hell.
Yeah.
And if you do still believe that, all right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Ask yourself a few questions, and then back at the farm, Thomason is getting some eggs from the chickens and stuff, and she drops one of the eggs, and it's been it cracks
it was
open. It's been
fertilized,
fertilized. Yeah, there's like kind of a half-formed chick in there with like blood and stuff.
Yeah.
She kind of stares at it.
That's like it's almost like a really cruel sign from God, right? Like she feels like she's responsible for Samuel's death, and then also you killed this thing too. Like
right. So fuck you. And then we cut back to the woods, and Willem is telling Caleb that he traded Catherine, the mother's, silver cup. It's like a silver wine cup for these traps that they're using, but she doesn't know about it. She doesn't know that her cup is gone and that he's traded it for these traps.
This ends up being a huge problem.
Yes, it is. And Fowler, which is their dog, their hunting dog that they have with them, sees a hare, a rabbit. This rabbit is kind of standing in the path looking at him. The dog's barking like crazy at it. The hare isn't moving. It's just kind of sitting there. And Willem loads up the rifle that he has with him, and it's an old-timey rifle, so it's not like an instant, draw it and fire.
Yeah.
He's got to like burn the cord and load it with powder and all that kind of shit. And the gun goes off, blows up in his face, and kind of temporarily blinds him, and he misses it, so he doesn't even get the rabbit. Now, this is where, looking back on it, there's sort of this theme of ineptitude in Willem.
Yes.
In terms of his ability to, again, in the values of the time.
Yeah.
The role of the man was to hunt and provide, and he clearly, as we just saw, cannot hunt, and as we saw from his corn, he cannot provide.
Right.
His ineptitude and his arrogance in thinking that he could go out from the village and provide for his family and take care of him and his own.
Yeah.
Is an extremely important part of his failing, and his motivations as a character are his failure to do what is expected of him.
And near the end of the movie, he admits that this is all about his pride. And so that's interesting to think about what it is that got them like kicked out of the plantation.
Yeah.
And like, why? Like, was it just him refusing to accept something that everyone else was saying because of his pride, or
he just assumed he knew better?
Yeah, like he felt like he knew better, and yeah. So yeah, it is a huge thing.
And then after that scene of him missing with the gun, we cut back to the farm. And the twins are romping around and just raging and singing a song about Black Phillip, which is the family goat, and they're singing a song about Black Phillip and stuff.
The aesthetic of this movie is very much influenced by one of my favorite all-time artists, Francisco de Goya.
Yeah,
and there are two paintings that I can think of offhand that have a large black he-goat. One of them is called Witches Sabbaths.
Oh, damn.
And in it, it's a big black he-goat surrounded by women who are, witches. And one of the women is bringing a baby to him, and they're desiccated corpses of babies around.
Holy shit, metal.
Yeah. And the other one is called El Gran Cabron, which means the great he-goat or large goat. He-goat. Anyway, it's great, and if you look at it, it looks so much like Black Phillip. Like the idea behind those paintings is, of course, that Satan is represented by this big black he-goat.
Right.
And the twins are singing a song about him. They say a crown grows out his head, which is a big like religious image. Jesus is given a crown by God, but Satan or Lucifer is represented with these horns.
Right.
And he's grown a crown, like he's provided himself a crown naturally.
Right.
So as though he has taken power unto himself.
Yeah. As of now, he's just a fucking goat that these kids like to sing a song about. And Thomason is cleaning out this goat pen, and she kind of zones out and stares into the woods. And the kids are chasing the goats around the barnyard and stuff there. And Willem comes back, and he kind of wrangles Black Phillip back into the pen, but gets like knocked over and stuff, and he gets like shit all over his clothes. And then the mom is like, Thomason, go and wash your father's clothes by the stream. And so Willem goes to chopping wood. Now, Willem chopping wood is something that we see like 5 times throughout the movie. He's chopping fucking wood, and it's very, very much like Jack Nicholson typing, all work and no play, mate Jack a dull boy.
Just a repetitive behavior. The first time we see him, he looks almost like a painting of Jesus washing the feet of the apostles, where he just has this towel, or not a towel, but it's sort of
kind of like a linen cloth around his waist, because he had to take his clothes off to get them washed.
It's interesting, the idea of him just constantly chopping wood, and it is mentioned later by Thomason. So like,
it's because that's all that he can actually do. Again, he can't hunt. He can't fucking provide for his family. All he can do is chop wood, so that's what he does. He's like, well, I'm doing something at least, because he's fucking inept. And so here's another cool thing, too, is we cut next to Thomason, and she's washing her dad's clothes by the stream. And Caleb comes down there, too, to fetch a pail of water.
Oh, this was right after Caleb lied about why they were in where they went.
You're right. That's important. Right. Go back and tell that.
The mom, because I was like, wait, what happened before that? The mom asked where they had been, and Caleb said that they had been in the valley because he had seen an apple tree.
Right.
Or at least he thought he had, but then they couldn't find it.
Right. He was like, we're going to get these apples. Yeah.
They're down so he comes down to the river, and he looks like, I guess, a little disappointed in himself.
Here's an important thing too: is like after Caleb said that they went down there to get the apples, Willem didn't even correct him. Willem wasn't like, no, we went to check these traps that I got. Because if he admitted they had traps, that would be admitting he had sold the cup. Yep. So he let his kid lie.
Yeah, and so far, like, that's true. Like, it could almost be that, I mean, it's not just his pride or his ineptitude. It could almost be that everything that happens after a certain point is because he lied about selling, or didn't tell his wife he was going to sell her father's silver cup.
Right.
And then just hid it from her. And
exactly.
Then the lie grew for a long time.
And then the thing is, too, is that next scene that we get where Thomason is washing his clothes in the river. Again, here's another clue. You mentioned earlier the clue about the blight on the corn possibly causing these crazy hallucinations and stuff.
Yeah.
So Thomason is washing the barnyard shit off of Dad's clothes, right? The water that Caleb gathers is from downstream.
It's downstream. Oh my God.
Yeah. It's blatantly shown.
They're drinking shit water.
They're drinking contaminated water, exactly. Which, again, more clues that maybe everybody was just ill as fuck. And Caleb kind of looks down her shirt again as she's watching these clothes and stuff. Because, again, Caleb's a boob man.
This could be misread easily as Thomason knows what's up and is trying to seduce him. But I'm pretty positive that Thomason rightly is like, why is my brother acting weird?
Right.
And she like tells him to come over. He sits on her lap and she just comforts him.
Yeah.
Now later, this is going to be mentioned by the mother as, maybe not this exact instance, but the mother mentions that she thinks that Thomason was trying to seduce her brother.
Yeah.
Which I think is not true. It doesn't seem to be true. Like, I think Thomason is just genuinely worried about her brother.
He's just yeah, exactly. And Thomason and Caleb, they hear something, and it's the girl. What's the girl's name? The twin girl?
Mercy is. Yeah, and she's singing.
And she's like, I'm the witch of the woods.
Yeah, she's saying that she's the witch of the woods, and she has like a stick between her legs, and she's pretending she's flying through the woods.
Right.
And she's saying clickety clackety. Okay, so we can assume the things I've read about this possibly being hallucinations and stuff. We can assume a lot of this can be hallucinations.
Right.
But we, the audience, were the only ones who saw the baby be taken and turned into a flying ointment and the witch fly to the moon.
Yep.
So we're not hallucinating.
No. But
now,
but again, as a folk tale, you're being told
sure.
what's been told, what's been told, what's been told. So
that's true. But so now Mercy is basically recounting that occurring. She's telling us like she's the witch of the woods, and she flies through the trees, and you can hear her broom hitting the branches.
Right.
And she and her brother Jonas are the ones who sing the songs about Black Phillip. They're the ones who supposedly talk to Black Phillip. Where does she get this knowledge?
Yeah.
I don't think
it's not like she heard it from one of the townspeople. They ain't in town anymore. It's like, where the fuck is this coming from even? And she's too young to have like, because that's the thing is
just made it up. Yeah,
exactly. She's like 5 or 6 in the movie.
Yeah.
And clearly they've been out on their own for several years. Like, Mercy wouldn't have even remembered being 2 or 3 years old in the town. Like, she doesn't remember any of this shit. Where the fuck is she hearing this stuff from?
Yeah.
And she says to Thomas, she says that Mother hates her. And then she also says, Black Phillip tells me to do what I want. Which is the definition of modern, LaVeyan Satanism is hedonism and doing what you want.
Do what thou will, yeah.
And it says that the witch stole Samuel.
So, yeah, she has all this knowledge. And it's possible she absorbed this. I highly doubt it. Like, I really think it seems more likely that she is actually talking to Black Phillip.
Right, exactly.
I don't know. Like, it's possible that some of that is all just absorbed maybe through some stories she heard, and it's just so coincidental. But it seems most likely in the story that she's genuinely talking to Black Phillip. So,
and then Thomason is like, I be the witch, and she's like, she's like going after Mercy and being like, I'm gonna fucking, whatever, grind you up, make your bones into my bread. She's kind of coming at her like she's the witch and she's gonna kill her and stuff just to scare her. And she tackles her and she's on top of her and all this stuff.
Thomason says that when she sleeps, her spirit slips away from her body and dances naked with the devil.
Right. Right.
Foreshadowing.
Yes.
So why is Mercy afraid of her though? Like, I just don't get it. Like, she knows Thomason isn't the witch that stole Samuel if she is talking to Black Phillip.
Right.
Black Phillip, of course, could be sowing distrust among the family, which is, I think, a big thing that plays out.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe Black Phillip's like, he doesn't tell her that it's not Thomason. I don't know.
So the next scene is the family back at their home and they're having dinner, and Willem is praying and stuff. Catherine asks Thomason where her silver wine cup is, and Thomason's like, I don't know. And Catherine's like, well, did the wolf take it too? Instantly kind of blaming Thomason for the whole, wolf taking the baby thing.
Yeah, and we get a sense. I mean, because Mercy said, Mom hates you.
Yeah.
We get a sense like, okay, maybe she does.
Maybe she does.
Yeah, and this is where we learn that Catherine, we learned throughout now that Catherine, she didn't want to do this. She didn't feel that this was the right thing to do. She just, basically had no choice. I mean,
and that's the thing too, is during that dinner scene, you see they're just eating basically like flat, unleavened bread. It's just like they're eating the bare minimum of survival food. They're out there starving to fucking death.
Yeah. And so she gives some pretty good, she finally makes her voice known, we shouldn't have done this. He says basically a bunch of religious mumbo jumbo, etc. But then he says, here's what we'll do. I'll take Thomason and we'll have her be a servant for another family.
Yeah, we'll take her into town. She'll serve a family. She's old enough now. Her womanhood is upon her.
Yeah. And basically what that would do is it could be an indentured servitude situation where basically she's not getting paid anything. They're just getting rid of one of the mouths to feed.
Yeah.
Or it's possible it would be sort of an exchange where the family would take her and she would do work, and they would maybe send something to the family as like a a payment for
Right.
her services.
Exactly. And Thomason overhears this from downstairs. She's awake and she hears him say that she's old enough to leave and serve another family and all that stuff.
Yeah, and all of the kids are up. This is great. I really like this. That all of the kids are just sitting listening to their parents downstairs. Like they're just sitting quietly.
Right.
And they all hear this, and Caleb decides, I guess, he wakes up early the next day. He decides to go hunt. He's gonna go check the traps. He's
Prove that they have enough food to keep around to keep Thomason home and not she doesn't need to leave, basically. He's trying to keep her there.
Yeah, which is a really sweet gesture, and also like we see Caleb sees like maybe that his dad isn't up too. Maybe he see because like he doesn't wake his dad up and say let's go check the traps.
Right. Yeah.
He sees maybe like, oh, I need to take up the slack. I just need like again think about that. Age of 12, you realize I might be the one who has to provide all the food for this family.
Keep us from starving to fucking death.
Yeah, that's insane. Anyway, Thomason comes out. She's like, hey, if you're going to go out there, I'm going with you. And so she gets on the horse and he sort of leads the horse out and they're walking through the woods.
They're checking the traps that they've set out and stuff. And they do find some rabbits. There's some dead rabbits that you see hanging on the side of the horse. So good news.
Yeah.
They have some food. While they're out there, the dog, Fowler, starts barking at that rabbit again. And so Caleb goes off to chase after it. The horse bucks Thomason off, and she falls and gets knocked out there. And back home, the twins are going crazy because they don't know where Thomason and Caleb are at. And so they're like tied up. They kind of like have them tied to the fence post, which I thought was funny.
Listen, seriously, think about that too. That's one of those things where you see that and you're like, oh my God, you don't tie your kids up. Well, when there are only two of you and you're looking for your other kids.
Yeah, what the fuck else are you going to do?
You tie your kids up.
Tie them up, exactly. And so then Willem and Catherine are going out into the woods and they're calling for Thomason and Caleb. They're trying to figure out where they are and stuff. And then you see Caleb in the woods calling for Thomason. So they've been separated. They're lost and stuff.
Caleb doesn't like you don't get any of the sound of them yelling, but he finds Fowler whining and he's been disemboweled.
Yeah, dog is gored.
And then it cuts to Thomason and you can hear them yelling. Thomason is just like coming to. So Caleb is really far away from Thomason at this point.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good little bit of filmmaking because you can see that they are far away from each other.
Yeah.
The woods are thick as hell. Caleb's lost. He's trying to find his way around. And he sees the rabbit and he goes after it and stuff. And you see Thomason finds Willem. Willem catches up with Thomason and, they kind of reunite and stuff there. As Caleb, somewhere deep into the woods, stumbles upon the witch house. And the witch house looks absolutely mortifying, fucking terrifying. It's like this moss covered, kind of like you said, it looks like it's sort of cut into the hill or cut into a cave or something like this. Yeah. It looks super dark. It looks very damp. It looks very mossy. It looks really fucking terrifying. Like as soon as you see this place, it looks really fucking scary. It looks like a damn witch house.
Yeah, and looks like a witch might live there.
And a young buxom woman with her boobs all sticking out because she knows what Caleb's after.
Yes, she does.
Young, really, really pretty buxom woman comes out and she's wearing a red cloak. The soundtrack at this point is also nuts as fuck, and it's awesome. And so she goes out to Caleb and she kisses him, and then like right as the shot is ending, her big nasty crone hand like closes around his head. It's very Shining-esque, very reminiscent of the scene in room 217.
Like suddenly Caleb has been taken by the witch, and William's gonna go look for him.
Yeah, back home, and Catherine is like, you don't have a horse because they took it. You don't have a dog because they took it, and you don't have a gun because Caleb also had the gun we forgot to mention earlier. So it's like he's literally just a man on foot now, going
Yeah.
off into the woods with no help. And again, he's fucking inept.
And Catherine wants to know why they went into the woods.
Yeah.
And Thomason says she promised not to tell. So this seems like, again, I keep going back to wanting to explain Puritan values. This seems like one of those instances where it's simple. She should just tell them.
Yeah.
But actually, in a Puritan's mind, this would be tough because by telling her brother that she wouldn't tell them, she promised him, meaning now, if she were to tell them, she would have borne false witness to him, which is equal, of course, to disobeying her father and mother.
Wow.
Which is what. So she would be going through so much in her head right now as to what it is she's supposed to say.
That's a good point.
And she just says to her mom, "Help me to find favor in your eyes."
Right.
So, and the mom says, just tell me what happened. And at this moment, William decides to admit that he took the cup.
He sold the cup to buy the traps and stuff, and he took Caleb into the woods to check the traps. He finally fesses up to it. And so Thomason goes off, and she offers to pin the goats up. Again, they hear the goats outside and stuff, so Thomason's out there with the goats, and it's raining, and it's dark, and it's nighttime and stuff. And then suddenly, Caleb appears back, standing by the fence post, out in the rain, freezing cold, and he's naked. And so then the next shot that we get is of Thomason and Catherine. They're kind of nursing Caleb back to health and stuff, and they old-timey remedy him and, like, poke a hole in his head and bleed, let blood loose off of his head and stuff. And
which is not very beneficial.
And meanwhile, while the women are trying to do something effective that is actually helping the situation, Willem is outside chopping fucking wood in the rain because he's a fucking idiot.
He's chopping wood in the rain, which, remember, there's a huge stack of wood next to the house.
The stack of wood by the house is like as tall as the house.
And it comes back into play later.
Yeah.
Its hugeness.
Yeah.
So a huge stack of wood. So he's doing this to get away from his problem.
Yeah, because the thing is like he has no... Well, and again here too, this kind of goes back to a lot of things at the time, but the women were in charge of the healing arts. They were the one that knew how to take care of Caleb and try to nurse him back to health. He knew nothing about it, so he's like, well, I can do this at least. I can go chop some wood.
By the way, women being in charge of the healing arts is also one of the things that led to accusations of witchcraft.
Yeah.
It's
Real
so
fucking
weird.
Catch-22.
Like an entire culture set up around women being like responsible for this, but also if they fail at it, it's probably because they're a witch.
It's really a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. And so then the next day we cut to Mercy, and she's asking Black Phillip what Thomason did to Caleb, because they're like, oh, he's witched or whatever. Thomason is there milking this goat, and then suddenly she realizes she's not getting milk out of the goat, but there's blood coming out of the goat's teat into the pail. Yeah,
and that's like an old school witch thing.
Oh, really?
Witches will cause your animals to milk blood or to sour the milk or something.
That's cool.
When it shows she kicks it out from under the goat, and it shows the blood just trickling out onto the hay. It's a really good shot.
It's a really cool shot, and it shows like Black Phillip just kind of watching on, like, yep. And Catherine is like praying over Caleb. Caleb is just kind of comatose at this point inside of the house, just sort of laying there looking really shitty. And she's like, "Is this some sort of witchcraft?"
Is this the first mention of witchcraft, by the way? Like, I mean, by the adults? Because I know, I mean, the little kids have talked about it, but like, even Thomason didn't seem to think it was like something serious.
Good point.
But I don't know. It seems like this is, I think, the first time she mentions witchcraft, and he seems to just dismiss it immediately,
Yeah.
and he says like, I'll take him to a doctor, someone who can heal him. So he seems to be leaning towards science here, or at least leaning towards remedies
Right.
over witchcraft.
Yeah, because he wants to go into town and find Caleb a doctor and find work for Thomason. And Catherine is just like, I just want to be home. I want to be home back in England.
If you haven't watched this, Kate Dickie is the mom. She also played the mom in Game of Thrones that was still breastfeeding her 8-year-old son.
Right, Cat's sister.
And she does so good in this movie.
Oh,
She
man,
is
she's
amazing.
fucking awesome,
But
dude.
this scene especially, she talks about like losing a child and losing the ability to love, like and not feeling at once like this great like love of Christ, and no longer being able to feel that.
Well, and she tells this in way of this dream that she had years ago
Yeah.
that was about her meeting Christ. And it was a very, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. Yeah, it was a very lusty, sexy dream.
Yeah. Yes.
It was a rock me sexy Jesus dream.
Yes, and that comes back into play in the not too distant future. But yeah, there's like, it's a very sexual, like passionate, like and she says like it made me feel like the something akin to like something better than a husband can give. Like
right.
So, like it's a very sort of sexual, like strong feeling she had in this dream. After that, like monologue, he just sort of walks away, and it goes to the outside where the twins are now singing another song about Black Phillip.
Yeah.
So
they hear a scream. They're out there like husking their shitty corn to take into town to try to sell, and they hear a scream from Caleb inside of the house.
And he's
having a hard
he
time.
repeats this. He says, "Get the broad axe, he'll cut off her head. Get the narrow axe, he'll cut off her head." I don't know what this means. I don't know how this comes into play.
I'm not quite exactly sure. At the very end of the movie, there's a chant that sounds somewhat similar to that, I noticed.
Oh, yeah.
It's similar. Oh, it's hard to say.
It does sound similar to the Witches Sabbath chant. Yeah.
Because the thing is that the again, not to jump too far ahead, but the language that the witches are speaking is mostly like Old Enochian or something like this.
Yeah. It would be that, like, well, I guess.
And it's kind of like the words that they're saying in whatever language it is kind of sound like what he said in English. So it's almost like he just sort of
heard it and he's repeating it. Yeah, like he can't repeat it exactly. He's repeating the sounds of it.
Exactly. And he's screaming and he's like, she's upon me, and she's like, my stomach.
He says, my bowels, my stomach, she pinches. Okay. Now this goes. First off, this guy, a kid, Harvey Scrimshaw, he has this scene and a scene coming up. Amazing.
Incredible.
So
fucking amazing.
Incredible. But you said earlier he was getting water from downstream. If he drank water with shit on it, he could get dysentery, which could explain his bowels and stomach.
Right, very much so.
It could explain his fever. It could explain everything.
Yeah.
If we're to believe that any bit of this can be hallucination, then maybe he got lost in the woods, found his way back, but as he was finding his way back, he was getting sicker and sicker from drinking dysentery water, and
it's very, very possible. And apparently too, like a lot of his lines about, she's upon me, she's, she pinches me and so on, are taken from actual transcriptions of possessions.
Yes.
So it's
God, I love that. I love research that went into this.
That's what I'm fucking saying, dude. I mean, Eggers took years putting this thing together because he's putting it together out of old writings from that time. A lot of the dialogue in the movie is writings of colonial people talking about witchcraft and possessions. It's so fucking
so good.
metal. And so his teeth clench, and he's like flipping out. He's like got blood coming out of his mouth and stuff because he's biting, I guess, his lip or his tongue. And
Yeah.
Willem like pries his teeth apart, and he spits out an apple, which is what he was lying about earlier. It's like a bloody,
Yes.
little teeny tiny apple.
And this can be so representative of so many things.
Oh, yeah.
Like the first and most meaningful is, this is the thing he lied about earlier, and it's like a whole apple. I mean, it's like a crab apple, but that's
So you've got a little stem on.
That's what an apple would have looked like back then,
Yeah,
before
very
they
small.
were like cultivated to become more sweet and larger.
Big, yeah.
So it's the lie about the apple. Of course, then there's the idea of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil.
Sure.
Which
there's a lot of Adam and Eve parallels in the movie.
Yeah, which some people associate that fruit with the knowledge of sex. Like
Right.
that the fruit was actually sex. So, could it be that the witch had sex with him? I mean, she kissed him.
Right. It's a symbol of his lust being upon him.
Yeah, she didn't sacrifice him. She didn't kill him.
It's very true. Yeah, you got a great point. And clearly, he was out for some boobs.
Yeah, and so that's a possibility. And also, of course, the possibility is that it's a poison apple. I mean, those are associated with witches
and so on. Sure.
So.
And so then the Mercy is like freaking out, and she's like, Thomason is a witch, and Willem quizzes her, and he's like, "Do you love to pray? Do you love the Lord?" and so on. And so they, and Thomason is like, "Yes, I love the Lord. I love to pray." Yada yada.
And they gather around Caleb to pray.
Right.
And like all three of them are praying, but the twins, they say they can't remember their prayer.
Yeah, they're stumbling on the words, like, "We can't remember our prayer," which apparently one of the old school tests for being a witch back in the day was, can you recite the Lord's Prayer?
Yeah.
Apparently a witch cannot recite the Lord's Prayer in its entirety, so it shows that the kids are kind of being taken, and they fall on the floor and they start quivering around and stuff, as Caleb also wakes back up, and he's like, "It's her. She's a cat, a crow, a raven, a wolf." He says all these different forms that I guess the witch can take.
She desires of my blood, she says. He says.
And the twins are like, as they're writhing around and stuff, they're repeating everything he says. So they're like, "A crow, a wolf." It's so fucking sick, dude.
God. Yeah. And so he comes out of it.
Yeah, Caleb.
For a second. And just like he declares his love of Christ.
Yeah,
and
recites some scripture.
He talks about Christ kissing him with his lips, and he talks about like just this like sort of erotically charged description of Christ.
Dude, I mean, seriously, that kid knocks it out of the fucking park.
Yeah, so great.
And he stops. He just suddenly stops. And he's dead.
And he's dead. The end for Caleb.
And
so
Catherine,
2 down.
Catherine is like, "Get thee away from him, get thee gone." She says it to Thomason and stuff, and Thomason runs away out of the house. Willem follows her and stuff, and kind of like cradles her and stuff in a very like, okay, he's still on her side about this stuff, very fatherly, daughterly. And then he starts questioning her about, okay, but for real though, are you a witch? Speak the truth and all this stuff.
Up to this point, what we've seen from him is that he is inept, but he's also incapable of communicating. And so whenever the baby died, it seemed like he just didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And he encouraged Catherine she needed to move on from her grief.
Right.
But now after Caleb dies, he's actually rattled now, and it's like he can't come up with some easily religious phrase to say to sort of put aside his grief, and he's becoming irrational. He's at this point like, okay, maybe you are a witch. Like, she calls him out.
She gets pretty hard on him.
Yeah, she's like, she calls him a hypocrite. she
like,
questions his manhood.
and she's like, you
She
let me
says,
take the blame for the cup, and you let Caleb take the blame for the
yeah,
apples.
yeah, and she says all you're good at is chopping wood. Like,
Right.
that's all you can do.
And he's like, you
And then
bitch.
she accuses the twins of being witches and tells him that they talked to Black Phillip.
Yeah, and that Black Phillip is Lucifer, and that the twins commune with him, and he gets fucking pissed.
Yeah, he just basically drags her back into the house and confronts. He tells Catherine what Thomason said, and the twins are like unconscious on the bed, but um he suspects that they're faking. He
Right.
says he doesn't want to play these childish games, and he says maybe I'll kill Jonas like Abraham was to do with his son or something like that, and he picks Jonas up, and Jonas suddenly screams.
Right.
Now,
he's like, wake and speak. And he flips
yeah,
out on him.
and so Jonas were they faking? Because as soon as Jonas starts screaming, Mercy starts screaming.
Right.
So like, were they faking? Like, again, like, are they the witches?
And so Willem flips out, and he locks Thomason and Mercy and Jonas into the goat pen. He like hammers them in there with some boards and stuff, so they are stuck in there. I'm not sure what his long-term plan here was.
He says that they'll stay there in the night, and they'll go to town and figure it out in the morning or something. I'm guessing he's going to take them into town for a witch trial.
Right.
Like,
right. Yeah.
So yeah, they're all stuck in there with Black Phillip and
the other
Thomason.
sheep. There's like a couple white sheep.
Yeah, there's a couple of other sheep. And Thomason, she asked them just point blank. She's just like, are like, is this you guys? Are you witches?
Yeah. Do you guys really talk with Black Phillip?
And they do the same with her. They basically ask her, and it seems like they come to almost a calm-headed moment where they're all three just like, okay, well, we're not witches.
Mom and Dad be crazy, yo.
Yeah, like, it seems like the twins have finally dropped to sort of pretense, maybe.
Right.
That, like,
it's not really fun and games anymore.
Yeah, but then, like, if that is true, they still were talking to Black Phillip. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And Willem and Catherine, in the meantime, are burying Caleb, and Catherine like gets down in the grave with them.
Yeah.
And like,
oh man,
it's brutal, kind of cradling. And then Willem is chopping wood in the middle of the fucking night because that's all he's good for. And he's like, "This is my fault," and he prays to redeem the children and so on. And he eats dirt and stuff. He's praying in a really torturous sort of way. And he really, I forgot to mention this earlier. The actor that plays Willem has like the most awesome voice, dude. He has like the most awesome like sub-octave.
Yeah,
it sounds like a crypt.
He was
being
on
open
Game
voice.
of Thrones,
right? He's in Harry Potter and stuff apparently too.
Oh yeah. He's one of the Caros in Harry Potter.
Yeah, exactly. He's got an awesome voice, but during this scene where he's like praying and he's like really, really, really into it, I think he kind of sounds like Andre the Giant.
He does.
He's like, I really eat dirt. Anybody want a peanut? He kind of does a little bit of that. I only doggy paddle. And Thomas watches on, and she hears him and sees him praying and stuff through one of the slats in the board.
We cut to Catherine, she's sleeping in the bed, and she takes off her hair covering for the first time.
Yeah, she's always had like a head covering the whole time.
Yeah, and this is a thing that women were supposed to keep their hair covered. So by taking that off, by uncovering her hair, she's like fully nude for the first time for us. I mean, she's wearing clothes, but I mean, we're fully seeing her.
Right. She has long blonde hair, just like Thomason's.
Yeah, and she sees her silver cup over in the corner of the room, and she walks over to it, and then she hears a sound behind her, and she turns around, and Caleb is sitting in a chair holding Samuel.
Yeah, holding the baby that left there at the first of the movie. Caleb was like, "Let Dad sleep."
Yeah, and his voice is wrong. Like it's a
That's
little
weird.
different. It's like he's like whispering, and
But it's loud. It's weird.
he sounds a little more demonic. And he says, "Mother, we have longed to see you so."
And then there's like, we cut back out to the shed, and there's like a thud, and the twins wake up, and there's something moving in there in the shed with them.
Yeah.
And then we cut back to Catherine with Caleb and Samuel, and she's like, "Oh, you know, the baby's hungry," and she kind of undoes the front of her shirt there to let the baby breastfeed and stuff. And then we cut back out to the shed, and the twins look across in the shed, and it's super dark, and there's like this huge old hag over there with one of the goats.
Yeah. And she just great, amazing witch cackle.
Oh, it's the fucking worst, dude. I'm like,
you hear the sound of like her like eating one of the goats.
Yeah.
And then this great witch cackle. And then if you listen closely, right at the end, you hear, I'm pretty sure, Jonas start choking. So I think she then like starts killing Jonas.
Dude, it's the worst. And the way the cinematography is right there too, it's like, it's so dark. You can barely see the outline of her there over there, like eating the goat. And she's nude and she has long hair and stuff. And she turns.
And while this is happening, while that great cackle happens, inside, I mean, Caleb told her like to sign his book. Inside, we cut to Catherine now. She has a raven that is pecking at her breast, and she is cackling.
Oh my god, dude.
Now,
is that not like Hieronymus Bosch as fuck?
Oh, yeah. It's real important to know, though, that a lot of accusations of witchcraft were often leveled at women who had recently dealt with losing a number of children.
Oh.
Because it was believed they would make a deal with the devil to see their kids again. So that's what happens.
Holy shit, really?
She makes a deal with the devil to be able to see her children. And so she has become a witch. I mean, there's no...
Wow.
We don't see her do the other things the other witches do, but I mean, that is what happens. She signed a deal with the devil.
I read a thing too online that said another really common accusation back in the day was that a witch basically had something sort of like a third nipple, a witch's teat, which of course is like, I've always heard the saying colder than a witch's tit, and I've never really understood what that meant, but apparently they believed back then that some of these witch women had basically like a third nipple with which they would nurse their familiars, their animal, spirit creatures and stuff. And that's exactly what's happening. This raven is, basically suckling at her witch's tit, and she's bleeding and shit. That shot is fucking unreal, dude. I just have in my notes, insane in huge letters underlined. Because, dude, between that plus the shot of the hag in the shed, it's just out of fucking control. Because really, honestly, like, there's not been that much, like, really shocking visual imagery in the movie since you saw the baby in the mortar and pestle. Like, you haven't really seen anything that fucked up at all.
And so like whenever we get the daylight, and now we didn't see what happened out there in the goat house, and so it's the next morning, and Willem comes out. He sees the goat house is just destroyed.
Well, let me point out another thing too here that I thought was cool is that he wakes up and he kind of climbs out of bed over Catherine.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of thinking maybe this was just a dream or some crazy shit, but you see that Catherine has a bloody spot on her shirt. Above where the crow had been pecking her. So you're like, oh shit, this really happened. Exposed. Yeah, exactly. So you're like, okay, this really did happen.
Yeah. So, So yeah, he goes out and yeah, it looks like a bomb has hit almost. Like the front is sort of blown out. Two goats are sort of disemboweled, and Thomason is laying on the ground, and she has blood on her hands.
Right. Then Black Phillip just fucking full on gets metal and damn gores Willem.
Yeah, it blindsides Willem. It just stabs him right in the side with his horn. And Will picks up a hand axe to fight back, and then just drops it.
Yeah, he's like, I deserve this.
He's like, I deserve this. This is what I deserve. And let me say again, there's nothing heroic there. I think this is further evidence of him being inept.
Yeah,
like, this is further evidence that he is just incapable of doing this job of taking care of this family. He would rather just die for the sin that he perceives than try to survive and take care of the people he still has around him.
Wow, that's a good point. He's like, wow, my sin is so great that I deserve to die, even if it means deserting my family. That's his holier than thou fucking, that's how deep it goes with him.
Good point. And he says, corruption, thou art my father.
Yeah.
And then Black Phillip butts him into that huge stack of kindling that all just falls and crashes and kills him. He's been I think this is a really effective moment. He set up his own destruction.
Yeah.
Like he this thing that preoccupied him so much is what destroys him.
Which is exactly what led him to be exiled. Maybe what led him to be exiled of the village in the first place is like, the Lord doth lead me to choppeth the wood. And they're like,
we have enough wood.
Yeah, it's like, dude, it's fine. And he's like, no, it is my right, my message to choppeth the wood. Now, get the fuck out.
And so after Black Phillip kills him, he just strolls away like a gangster.
Yeah, he's just like, and that's done. And then Thomason walks over to him, and
oh my God, this okay. What happens right here is the best part of this movie to me. Awesome. I think it's the just absolute best part. Thomason slowly sort of approaches her father and begins to stoop down, and out of nowhere, Catherine grabs her by the hair of the head and like just accuses her of everything.
Yeah,
that she's the witch. She says, "You bewitched thy brother, sluts. Did you not think I saw thy sluttish looks to him, bewitching his eye as any whore?"
Yeah.
So like, then she says, "And thy father next." So like she was feeling such hatred towards her daughter that she started thinking her daughter was also trying to have sex, not only with her younger brother but also with her father.
And is that her feeling? Because again, there's a big mention earlier about how Thomason was coming into her womanhood.
Yeah.
And here's the mom who's clearly, aging and stuff and losing children left and right, and then suckling a damn raven. Is this kind of a symbol of her jealousy towards Thomason for being a young, fertile woman?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because it seems like exactly what she would want is to be in Thomason's position.
Yes,
but to be herself back in England as a young girl, to feel that feeling again, and to not have all this responsibility and all this grimness and just death around her.
Exactly, dude. It's fucking right. And even like the way that their hair mirrors each other then and stuff is very, I think, very symbolic of that.
Okay, and so there's some scenes that I always go back to that I think of as particularly like had to be very trying and hard for the actors involved.
Right.
One of those is there in the Bourne Supremacy, I believe. He has a fight in a bathroom, like a really small area.
Oh yeah, it's cool.
They shoot it so well, and it like flows together so well, but it's so enclosed, and it would have been so hard and so tough to keep some sort of intensity in such a small space. I would think here this would be so hard to keep this intensity, because her mother Like the way that Kate Dickey plays it, she looks like she wants to genuinely kill her.
Yeah, she's
and
raging.
and just like the way like there's so much like just real rage coming out. um it's just this real intense moment. And the mother, she's just like wildly swinging at Thomason, and Thomason is just saying over and over, "I love you, I love you." It's like just this like really, I guess she's at this point now. Thomason just realizes like there's nothing holding her back. Like if she really does hate me, she really does want me dead.
Yeah.
Like all I can tell her is I love her. And then uh the, she reaches for something to fight her off, and she grabs this billock, uh, which is like a sort of curved knife used for cutting at stalks, and she slices her mother's face. Uh, and there's just that shock moment where it's like, oh, you just cut my face.
Yeah.
And the blood is pouring down onto Thomason's face, and there's just blood all over her face. And then the
So
mom
awesome.
starts choking her.
Brutal. It looks brutal.
Just brutal, like choking. And Thomason finally stabs her several times.
It's brutal, and you can tell too. Like as she's stabbing her, like she hates that she's doing it. It's just such a great performance because it's not just like it's not like a self-defense. Like I've got to kill you before you kill me. Frantic stab. It's like a God damn it, I have to fucking do this because she's gonna kill me.
Yeah, and then it cuts to what I think is the most well composed shot of the entire film.
Oh, dude!
It cuts to just the front of the house, and it's so perfectly balanced with barrels on the right and the door on the left, and
Dead
Thomason,
dad under the wood pile over there.
Yeah, and Thomason is there with their mother on top of her, just tons of red blood on their white clothes. It's just a beautiful shot, and also like the moment where Thomason is now absolutely alone. Like it's so like they show this shot, which is this just sort of muted composition, and the sound is just like,
yeah, it's just so alone, dude. It's so alone.
And she she goes inside, takes off her bloody like clothes, picks up a blanket, and just lays her head down on the table and passes out.
Yeah.
Can't imagine what else you would do.
No. She wakes up and it's nighttime, and she goes out to the shed, back to the goat pen, to Black Phillip. And she conjures Black Phillip to speak with her. She demands that Black Phillip take physical form and speak with her and commune with her. And then, holy fucking shit, this scene, dude.
It's okay. So, yeah, he pulls out his book and says, sign my book. She says she can't. Like she doesn't know how to write.
Like you don't even really see. This is one of those things that I really love. Yeah. You don't really see who the fuck she's talking to.
No, but yeah, it's obviously now a more of a human sort of shadow. It doesn't look like Black Phillip necessarily, but it doesn't. We don't see it entirely because again, they're only using like moonlight coming through the broken wall of the little goat pen.
I almost get the impression that it was like a colonial looking fancy dressed guy. I almost saw some spurs in one shot.
Yeah.
And the voice, dude, the voice of Black Phillip, once Black Phillip finally starts speaking, is insane. I don't know how they did his voice from a sound design perspective, because it's not like a Christian Bale Batman voice where it's like it's been run through like a sub-octaver and all this crazy shit. It kind of sounds like they recorded the same guy twice and slightly staggered it. And man, his delivery is so quiet and silky and just, oh my fucking God, his voice is perfect. It couldn't be more perfect. And he answered questions. He says, what dost thou want? And he's like,
Yeah.
the taste of butter, a fancy dress. And then my favorite line, he goes, would you like to live deliciously?
Yeah.
To see the world? Holy fuck. It is the coolest. He basically asks her, do you want to live with these human desires and hedonistic wants?
Yeah.
Do you want to see the world? Do you want to live? Do you want the taste of good food? Do you want a fancy dress?
Or do you want this?
Yeah.
Do you want to like strive to survive and be in such an insular position that like any bit of intrigue or any bit of like worry, and suddenly everyone is blaming you for everything? Like, yeah, it's a pretty sweet deal he's offering. I did have one issue with this because she says she can't write her name, which makes sense.
Yeah, she's like,
and
she
he
says
says,
yes, and he's like, sign your name in my book.
I will guide thy hand.
I love
All right.
that line. That's so fucking
Now,
cool.
It is. It's awesome. But what are the rules of Satan? Now, we know from The Devil Went Down to Georgia that he has a boss.
Sure.
Because at a point, he was in a bind and way behind. he owed somebody some numbers. And there are apparently rules that he needs your signature in a book, but apparently he can guide your hand. Now, what's going on?
Yeah.
Come on, Satan.
Where's the line of consent here? I love that shot too, because he goes, I will guide thy hand. And then like as soon as like the last syllable of hand is spoken, there's this sound that sounds like a gong being struck.
Yeah.
And you shoot to her.
Oh man.
Dude, this shot is the fucking most rad thing ever. She's naked and she's
a wide shot too.
Super
it's a shot that we've seen a few times of the woods, like showing like how the woods sort of it almost form a wall.
Yeah.
Like it's just like woods and then suddenly a thing.
What I love too about those woods, as we saw several times throughout the movie, those trees look like they're like damn 400 feet tall. Like they
look so big.
The nature and the scenery in the way that they dwarf the humans in the movie is crushing. And that's one of my favorite things. I find this a lot of times in horror movies. Some of my favorite things in horror movies are the things where you realize how itty bitty and insignificant humans are. Like again, I keep using The Shining as an example, but it's like the way the Overlook just swallows those people and just makes them look so insignificant and puny.
Yeah.
These trees of the woods are colossal and unaffected by all this bullshit that's going on around them. It's like that.
Yeah. None of this ever bothers the trees. Yeah.
No, and they're huge. And dude, that scene of her naked walking into the forest and Black Phillip as a goat is there prancing into the forest with her under the full moon.
And it's only lit by the moon. This is a wide shot. Like she's easily 30 feet away from the camera. So like they had to wait for this right moment where the moonlight was hitting at that exact spot to get this great, just beautiful wide shot. And just how fortunate that the goat pranced behind her the way it did. Like it's just perfect. It like sort of zigzags behind her. It's awesome. Great shot. And so she's walking through the woods now. And you can hear this chanting and this just sort of like rhythmic chanting in this language that doesn't sound like,
which is what I said earlier. It kind of sounds like the grab the half axe, cut off her head. It kind of sounds like that, but it's not that what they're saying, because they're saying some other ancient language. Yeah, and
they're just like on the ground, kneeling. They're arching their backs up and down. They're throwing their hair back wildly.
And they're like naked women too. They're naked out there.
Yeah.
Also, there are 6 of them.
Say what?
Hey.
Oh, I wonder if Kelder was there.
Oh.
So the woman, they start whooping and cackling, and they start floating. And Thomason, she walks right to the circle, and she starts to float. And she's got this huge smile, like what we see here is she starts floating up, she starts smiling, and then the last shot, it cuts back, and you see her like up at the top almost of one of these tall trees, and she's in like a Christ pose, floating upward. And so this is where I get like my thought behind this movie is that this movie is a story of salvation from an oppressive, anxiety-riddled Orthodox religion.
Right.
Like, she is being saved from something that killed her entire family.
Right.
Did the witch do it? Did Satan do these things? Maybe. I mean, we get early a reference to Job, to the story of Job.
Yeah.
And in the story of Job, Job has everything, loses everything except his agency, basically. Like, and he has this opportunity to curse God, and he doesn't, and he gets everything back, like a new family, new things, etc. And the thing I've always thought about that story, and I think that this movie sort of does, is she's like Job. She loses everything. Everything's taken violently away from her when she's asked God to shine his light upon her. And she's in this moment where she can choose, like, do I want to go, or do I want to stick my faith with God and say that he'll see me through this, or do I want to give into the devil who's offering me all these things? And what God has given her up to this point is shit.
Right.
Like Job, he had land, and he had like nice house, he had a big family. And God comes along and takes all that, and then Job, apparently a psychopath, is okay with like just getting a new family. Like, oh well, I got a family still. Like she in her mind doesn't have that feeling of like, I can move on from this and still praise God. Like I can just maybe go back to town and try to start a new family or something, and try to pull the wreckage of my life together. She's just like, no, like I don't want to be in the position of having to praise someone who does all of this to me when I just ask him to shine his light upon me.
Right.
So and so to her, like, this is a great salvation moment, but also the music is eerie, and we do know that a witch did kill Samuel at the very least. We saw that.
Here's the thing too that isn't explicitly stated, but is kind of alluded to as well. As earlier in the movie we saw that after they ground up baby Samuel, that gave him the flying ointment that allowed them to fly. All these witches are flying. Is that basically from the blood of the twins?
Maybe.
And here's the thing too, whenever Thomason begins to fly, is that because she's been bathed in the blood of her mother?
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a very important symbol, by the way, though, because the idea in Christ that we receive salvation through the blood of the Father.
Oh, wow.
She receives her salvation through the blood of her mother. Yeah, I think you're exactly right.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. She receives her salvation. She receives this like exaltation through the blood of her mother.
Whoa, that is the thing that finally like frees her of all this, isn't it? It's like a complete 180.
Yeah.
From Christian faith, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's like just
we get these
opposite sacraments, and we get like, and that is what the Witches Sabbath is supposed to represent, like this sort of opposite sacrament where you're taking the blood of an innocent, but it wasn't blood offered. Like, I mean,
Holy
Jesus,
shit.
you're supposedly taking the blood of Jesus because he was innocent, but this blood isn't being offered to you.
Taken.
So, yeah.
That's so metal, dude. Fuck, this movie's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody is great in this movie. Everybody
incredible.
Involved in it is awesome. It's so perfectly well written, so amazingly well shot. There's nothing about this movie that would ever need to change.
No.
This is absolutely a 10 out of 10 for me.
I mean, it is so brutal and unnerving to watch that I don't know if it has the replay value of something like, I don't know, just some of my other horror favorites, which I'll watch because they're fun to watch.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say this is fun to watch, but that's not what you want in a horror movie anyway.
Yeah.
But dude, it's like you said, it is an absolutely, I think, fucking perfect movie on a performance level, on an artistic level, on a cinematography level, on a symbolism level. So many layers that you could think of. I see, and you know, after we watched this, I posted on Facebook about how I watched it, and I saw a bunch of people be like, man, I hated this movie because it was fucking slow. I hated this movie. It didn't follow a linear storyline. A bunch of people, which I read some more reviews online and stuff about it too, and there's a lot of people that dislike this movie because they found the dialogue hard to understand, which actually, after I read that, I did remember that very first time that I watched it when I was like drunk over at Lindsay's house. I do remember thinking, I'm having a hard time understanding some of what they're saying. I thought it's because I was drunk. It's because it's old-timey colonial speak. Definitely watch this one with the captions on. I don't mind that at all. It's authentic. It's fine. I'm about it. But I could see, like, if I saw this in a movie theater, there's a lot of movie theaters around here that just have really shitty audio systems, or they crank the audio too loud, and I don't know. It would be hard, I guess.
I think also it's exposure to it. I mean, and this, I don't want this to sound like some sort of weird intellectual elitism, but like, I think maybe if you've read a bit more where that sort of speech is used, it just sounds a little more natural.
Right.
But I think, I can see how that it's still, people really have troubles with these and thous and things like that. I understand. Right. I mean, there's no reason why it would sound natural. So I get that criticism. That makes sense.
I'm kind of in the habit of watching movies with captions on at home all the time anyway.
Yeah. Just
because I hate rewinding, like, what did he say? Like, I hate.
Yeah, I always use captions. Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is one of those ones that I recommend. You know, if you're a caption watcher, I would recommend watching it with the captions on. Yeah. I see people complaining about how it was slow, and I think it's seriously just meathead people that think a horror movie equals a bunch of fucking jump scares where shit pops out and there's a violent screech in the music. This movie somehow manages to avoid all of that.
Yeah.
And is still somehow one of the scariest movies I've seen in memory. Like, I seriously just watched this the other night. I'm a grown-ass man. And, like, afterwards, I was like, I really felt nervous staying awake. Because, like, where I live at is kind of in the woods.
It's the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I've got woods and stuff all around my house. And when it's night here, it's pitch dark. My wife goes to bed much earlier than I do, so I'm just alone up here awake, surrounded by all these woods and stuff. And I felt genuinely unnerved in a way that I can't think of having felt that way in a really long time. This movie had a profound effect on me. I think it's fucking incredible. And like I said, I mean, if your idea of a scary movie is lots of gore, lots of jump scares and shit like that, this isn't really your ride. You won't get into this. But those are my favorites. Those are my favorite scary movies.
Yeah.
Are the slow burns. I mean, I feel like I saw a lot of reviews too where people are like, man, there's only 2 scenes with witches in this whole movie. Where's the witch? And it's like, I imagine these people, if there was like an internet back when Jaws was made, they'd be like, you barely see the shark.
I actually think those people maybe took it so literally that they would be like, you hardly ever see the shark's jaws.
And it's like, that's what makes it so badass, dude. Like, the fact that you barely see the witch in this movie keeps you going. Is this really happening? Like, is this just their hysteria and suspicion? Are they hallucinating? Is this... I think it's fucking incredible how you barely see the witch at all.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. I think also in the end, the villain of this movie isn't fully entirely the witch. Like,
right. Yeah, because like
I mean,
even Black Phillip, it's like, is he necessarily a bad guy here? Because
yeah,
he kind of did manage to get Thomason away from all these fucking crazies.
yeah. It's almost like the witch is a force of nature in this, and it's like what we find out is that the Willem's Pride, he thought he could take on nature.
Yeah,
And
right.
you can't take on nature, and so in this sense, like the witch isn't entirely like a person or people. It's this force of nature that comes from the woods that keeps I guess this expansion of the Puritans at bay. Like it keeps them from taking out too much of this nature.
And you know, to me, a lot of it too is all about the fear of the power of women.
Yeah, it is.
Which I would like to say is something that was held back then, but is something that is still held now.
Yeah, yeah,
The power,
yeah,
the power of the female is something that has long mystified and terrified males through history.
yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I feel like especially towards the end of the movie where it's just this commune of women who are clearly self-sufficient, are making their own without any men present. They don't need men, and they're naked and they're wild and they're chanting and they're flying, and it's just that notion had to be the most terrifying thing for a Puritan Christian male back then. That had to be the scariest thing in the fucking world.
The general idea of witches back then was these are women who are trying to take away power from men.
Right, yeah, exactly, man, and smear them by any means possible. I think this movie does an incredible job of looking at some of those issues in the light that they would be looked at back then. It's really one of my favorite horror movies of the past 15 or 20 years. Like, I think back at, like, when I think of some of my favorites in the past, again, 15 or 20 years, I think about this. I think about The House of the Devil by Ty West, which is one of my favorites.
Great one.
I think It Follows is fucking incredible.
Yeah, love It Follows.
I think Cabin in the Woods, one of my absolute favorites. Yeah. I mean, this movie to me is really, it's really a fantastic piece of horror from this side of the millennium. Can't really think of anything I would compare it to. Wonderful. Love it, man. So, yeah, total great flick. Can't recommend it enough.
Well, how about next week we just go way back in time?
You want to go back in that Wayback Rig?
Yeah. Let's jump on the Wayback Rig and watch The Exorcist.
How about it? Okay, so this will be fun because I am a grown ass man, and I fashioned myself a horror fan, a hardcore horror movie fan. And although I've mentioned on previous podcasts a very much late in life bloomer to horror movies, this will be my first time watching The Exorcist. Have never seen it.
This will also be a special viewing for me because I'm going to try really hard to like The Exorcist. I, as someone who's watched horror movies his entire life, I've seen The Exorcist a number of times. I've never found it scary and never fully liked it, but I haven't watched it as a full adult, which I think is entirely important. If you saw a horror movie as a teenager and you thought it was terrible and everybody keeps telling you it's good, try watching it as an adult. Sometimes you'll start to understand the nature of its horror, and I hope that's what happens with me with Exorcist. So
we will find out on the next episode of Dead and Lovely. In the meantime, where can they find us on them internet, Steve?
Well, you can email us at deadandlovelypod@gmail.com, or you can find us on the Twitters at deadlovelypod.
Oh, that Dead Lovely Pod. You guys can find me on the Instagram and Twitter at Ben Eller Guitars. That's all one word, Ben Eller Guitars. Where can they find you on there, Steve?
At Steven Spratling, StevenSpratling.
That's fantastic. I think I'll give you a follower myself, Steve.
Oh, man, finally.
Well, Steve, I had a good time talking with you about this old witchy movie here. I really enjoyed it. I do wish that the dude, imagine this. Imagine the movie is exactly as it is, 100% frame by frame, exactly the same, right?
Uh-huh.
On the very end of the movie, she finds a witch's coven, they fly, she flies, then screen turns black. Cue, ooh, witchy woman.
Yeah, that would be great.
That's the only thing that could have made the movie better. That's my one critique. It needed witchy woman.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.